It is hard to remember what life in the mills was like. This, then, is a story about a building, about Laconia and some of its people, and about an age gone past. Today, our mill buildings stand silent, mute testament to their past, revealing little about the life and people who worked inside. But if you look closely, you can see traces, scars, shadows of their past. To say mills were the lifeblood of New England is an understatement. From the 1700s on, mills increasingly were the main source of wealth to most communities. Although fur trappers were the first Europeans to navigate New England rivers, the English settlers began harnessing the rivers for sawmills, grist mills, and anything else that could be worked with rotary power. By the 1800s, equipped with stolen English technology, spinning and weaving mills began to spring up on the many glacially created rivers in New England. With the abundant water power of the Winnipesaukee River, the Meredith Cotton and Woolen Company was established in 1811 at the future site of the Belknap Mill. Consumed in a conflagration a few years later, the mill was rebuilt in 1823 from brick. Managing to adapt to the many technological and economic changes of the Industrial Revolution, the Belknap Mill has survived down to this day as one of the central symbols of Laconia's past. As the operations of the mills grew, labor requirements expanded. Originally, mill workers were the second sons and daughters who had no inheritance on the farm. Soon the need for human capital began to draw on the waves of Irish immigration that began in the 1800s and then grew quickly after the Great Famine during the middle years of the 19th century. Hard-working and industrious, the Irish added greatly to the backbone of the early American Industrial Revolution, providing artisans, mechanics, and the brute strength and dexterity required of the mills. The mills were dirty, dangerous places that used up men, women, and children, often killing or maiming them with unguarded machinery. Those who survived accidents often succumbed to respiratory disease, long hours, poor lights, and incessant noise, all for pennies a day. As time passed, the original brick building became the hub of a web of interconnected buildings whose function supported the overall goals of production. Many were not brick, and often were even meaner and had worse conditions than the original mill structure. The original mills were built in a time when exterior light was often the sole form of illumination in the production areas. Tall and narrow windows in tall, narrow buildings brought maximum light to the interior. Mill production expanded rapidly during the Civil War and created demand for more and more workers. During the same period, economic conditions were deteriorating in Quebec province, and whole families began moving south to the burgeoning New England mill towns, bringing their language and religion with them. Until the 1950s, French was a second language in many parochial schools and homes. Laconia's Sacred Heart Church stands as a beautiful reminder of our multicultural heritage. Keeping up with the times, the mill created one of the first hydroelectric power plants in the region. The wheelhouse, created during the 1900s, pioneered a vertical turbine that provided more power during the low water periods of summer. These turbines provided electricity to the mill, and at one time the rest was sold to the city of Laconia. This electrification allowed the proliferation of outbuildings by providing artificial illumination. Whereas the work period was once regulated by the sun, lighting expanded the workday. During the demanding periods of World War I, the mill could produce hosiery 24 hours a day. The genius of industrialization was the collection of different production functions under one roof. During most of the world's history, what passed for industry was often spread out over hundreds or thousands of miles. Flax might be made in Egypt, dyes in India, weaving in Scotland. Cottage industry slowly gave way to centralization. Increasing mechanization meant greater and greater reliance on power, and the power had to get to machines. So mills were crisscrossed by belts, shafts, and pulleys, hundreds all spinning and whirring loudly, creating a bedlam of action and noise. With centralization, distinct categories of work developed, each with specialized skills and different levels of pay and status. In the hosiery mill, the main categories of work were knitter, looper, border, finisher, turner, and supporting all of them, mechanics, supervisors, clerks, and the owners. Often a whole family of relatives managed different aspects of the mill. Mill workers began as early as age 6 and worked all of their life. Depending on season, they worked 10 or 12 or 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Many workers lived in company housing and bought all their goods at the company store. As mills cast wider and wider geographic nets, many new workers had their travel paid and had to work it off, which could take years with little real take-home pay. Retirement only happened when a worker could no longer work, some because of poor eyesight, broken muscles from back-breaking labor, black lung, or just too slow for the rapid speed of the machinery. Your only social security was your family and church. Why would people subject themselves to these conditions? Because many had lived even poorer lives on broken farms in the overworked countryside. Farming life was difficult, especially when few owned their land. In Ireland alone, over 6 million people starved outright during the potato famine. So, it is important to know when you walk through a mill building that it contains the stories of thousands of lives, many impossible by today's standards, but all of them in some way contributing to our modern life and prosperity. Indeed, they contribute to who we are because they were our parents and grandparents, uncles and aunts, and so on and so on. Today, thanks to the efforts of many, especially Peter Karagianis, who mortgaged his home to save the mill, this historic and inspiring building that provided livelihood to so many has reinvented itself into a center of cultural, artistic, and community activity. Indeed, the building's simple lines and shape have been preserved and are an important symbol for Laconia, a symbol of spirit and beauty, a symbol of respect for the past, even as we struggle to adapt to the onrushing future.